It seems like Dragon Age Veilguard is setting the standard for action RPG games with its overall outlook and bringing more diverse cast of characters, more assortment of gender-oriented characters, and of course, even more so ugly characters. And I think this is a thing we've saw occur within the gaming industry throughout the past few years, where we get this uglification process of a lot of the characters, we get a lot of diversity implemented, and of course we get a lot more gender orientation variety amongst the cast of characters. And I think within RPGs like Baldur's Gate 3, like Hades 2, we get a perspective that this is the outline for the future of the industry. Things are more focused on racial politics, more focused on gender elements when it comes to LGBTQ characters, and you absolutely get this within Dragon Age the Veilguard, where we get an obvious push where most of the characters will be pansexual, where they are open to every single gender, kind of stripping themselves of their own agency and character, since they're just open to everything and they have no well-defined boundaries. And I think this is just a poor choice, the story development wise and character wise, because you just remove the diversity within the characters themselves, especially when you're always pushing for diversity. I think this is the hypocrisy that we're seeing develop in the video gaming industry as we stick to these overly focused goals of inserting these progressive political standpoints within the video gaming industry. I think Dragon Age the Veilguard is one of those key points of where we're getting that amalgamation of these progressive ideals coming together into a game to destroy it. So there's a strange dichotomy in gaming where everything has to be focused on gender orientation, diversity and disability, and overall unattractiveness of the character. And I think this is what we get in spades with Dragon Age Veilguard, where we get a whole host of diverse, racially bent characters that are unattractive. And I think this is the standard set in modern day gaming, where most of the characters have to be within this model of design. And I think that's the thing that I see that as a problem with Dragon Age Veilguard for the most part, where it's trying to fit into the modern day standard where everything has to be ugly, everything has to be less attractive, everything has to have some sort of gender orientation variety, and everything has to be diverse. I think that is stripping away the character of gaming, because you're set on a standard that is predictable now, where you can just know from the developer that you're gonna get something that is very unattractive and unappealing, but even more so, something very set on giving you a progressive modern day take on whatever game that they're making. I think that's the case with Dragon Age the Veilguard, where it's following the standard set within the industry. And I think that standard is breaking down most recently. If you look at games that are getting massive success and appeal from the gamers themselves, it's coming from games like Stellar Blade, where we have these beautiful designs and characters that look like something we have seen in the past in video gaming industry when it was made of people that wanted to make games for the game players. And I think that's the set that we're seeing evolve within the industry, where people are coming back to that notion that, oh yeah, game players want something beautiful and attractive to look at, and that's why we're going to make these games designed in this way. And I think Stellar Blade is showing that dichotomy within the industry, where we're realizing right now that game players are still looking for these type of designs, but the developers themselves are trying to force their own perspective onto the gamers. And I think that's what we're seeing with Dragon Age Veilguard, where it's a game trying to force its perspective using all the tropes that we've been seeing in the video gaming industry when it comes to character design. I think Dragon Age Veilguard might be one of those games, as it seeks to be everything to everyone and nothing to the actual devoted game players that are willing to purchase this game. And I think that is the end result that we're seeing built up within the industry, where it's there to strip away all the things that are attractive to the gamers. And I think this dichotomy builds up when you have these other games that are coming out that are appeasing the gamers and their taste. I'm talking about Stellar Blade, where we have character designs that are made to appeal to a mass audience and fan base that are waiting for these attractive characters to return into the gaming industry. And I think Stellar Blade is probably one of those key points where you have a shifting of the guard, where people are realizing, I want these beautiful characters back. And I think that is not happening with a lot of these older games that are coming out in development focused on these outdated progressive political standpoints that no one really cares about, where the character design is mainly there to push the political progressive ideology that they want to set onto the game player. And I think that is the thing game players are having a aversion to it as well. I know they made this character black because they just want a diversity check mark. It's not because they actually want a black character. But I think even though this is probably a creative character, I know they did that in the trailer because their mind is not set on the gameplay or the story or anything related to that. Everything is set on these notions of the three focuses of their ideology, which is always diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think we have that face within the trailer where I'm just like, okay, I feel like these guys are not even, I feel like the developers are not even focused on making something for the game players. They're making something for a political ideology, and it's getting annoying for the game player themselves. And that's why games that are coming out that kind of have their own problems, like Nexon's The First Descendant, are making a lot of money because it's a game that is appealing to the natural aesthetic of the people that are playing games. And gamers like things that look cool and attractive and appealing. And I think that is a lost factor within the gaming industry. And you have games like Nexon's The First Descendant taking advantage of that, making hundreds of millions of dollars prospectively because they're making that appeal. Even though it has its own price gouging practices, it's making bank because it's a rarity now to get a game that's focused on beautiful character design. And I think that's the thing that we have to understand now within the industry. We have these two competing ideologies, these two competing focuses, where we have one that's focused on an ideology and they want to actually express that ideology regardless of losing money and profit, and we have another perspective where people are going to take advantage of those leaving out the focus of profitability, and they're going to make money by chasing these old character designs that always made money, that always got attraction from the game players, and usually brought about a marketability that was effective in getting your game out there. And I think The First Descendant is a representation of that, and I think we have Stellar Blade, a representation on the other end of a game that is knowing that it appeals to people in this way, knowing that it can get a large, broad-based market by appealing to what gamers actually want to see. And I think that is a failure that we're seeing with Dragon Age Veilguard, where it's trying to make a game for everyone when not everyone is playing video games. And I think that is a failure to task to knowing the identity of your game. I think Dragon Age has always been this diverse game. It didn't really need to do more than it already did, and I think it doing it more kind of reached an excessive point where you're thinking like, okay, you're going a little too far. It was already a diverse, complete game with its first 3 iterations, where you don't really need to push things too far. And I think that is the case that we're seeing with the modern day Dragon Age, where it's just a game that it wants to appeal to everyone. And I think we see that reflective in some of the stances that we're seeing put out there, where it's trying to be something that's trying to be more in line with what it considers modern day politics. And you can have that understanding where they're trying to do the Baldur's Gate 3 thing, where it's leaning towards more corn oriented or really graphically displayed character designs, made in part to get this attention from these communities that are more in line with their progressive ideology. And I think that's the thing that we're seeing play out with the designs, with the character models, with the overall gender preferences, and of course I think even the no death mode. I know this has been in a lot of fantasy games, but I think it's just going back to that attempt to be accessible to everyone when not everybody's going to be playing these games. But I think their focus in this is oriented towards this progressive ideology that they want to impose onto the gamer. I think ultimately we're getting these bland sort of games that are obvious in their agenda, and I think that agenda might be able to destroy the studios that are creating these games. And I think BioWare is probably in trouble with that. But what do I know? Maybe you would still prefer this version of the Dragon Age Veilguard. I think Dragon Age has always been a diverse, open game, but I think they're going too far now by removing that diversity, by making it a single gender identity type of game where everyone has the same ideologies, feelings, and thoughts, and it just makes it almost bland in a sort of way. And I think that's the thing that I fear most about the sequel for Dragon Age Veilguard. I haven't been a fan of some of the previous sequels. I know that they have their problems, but now I'm looking at this one, I'm like, okay, this is even worse than what I've seen before. But you leave a comment, tell me what you think about the dichotomy between these two games, between Dragon Age Veilguard, Stellar Blade, the First Ascendant included, where they're just doing different things in a different way, and it's appealing to a mass fan base in different ways. I think specifically for these new games, Dragon Age Veilguard, they're going to have a hard time competing with these new games that are actually grabbing the audience with ways that are traditionally known to work. And I think what Dragon Age is doing is going after an audience that may not work in their favor. And I think they can have Baldur's Gate 3 as an example. Baldur's Gate 3 was made by a passionate development team that actually knows about games. I don't think that's the case with BioWare nowadays. All the talented people have left, and all we're left with is now political activists. I'm hesitant to think that game will be good, but maybe it will be. Maybe we have to put trust in the people that are developing the game at BioWare, but I really don't trust them, because it seems like it's a gathering of people that are just there for the political activism and are just there to use the husk of Dragon Age as their delivery system of their philosophy. And I think we're seeing that bear out with their overall mentions of the no death difficulty, which is something I know has been there for a while, but having the pansexual options for all the characters, where they just don't have their own gender identity anymore, you're just open for everything, just gives me a connotation that, oh, they're making this game mostly for ideology and not for a good story. And I think the story was already going in the dumps with the previous one. It seems like it's just going more so in that direction. But you leave your comments, tell me what you think about the situation. What do you think is going on with Dragon Age Veilguard? Do you think it will be a success on these platforms? I think it may be, just because off the hype of Baldur's Gate 3, but I think it's going to lose a considerable audience over its decision making of what this game will ultimately be. But tell me what you think about the situation. I'd like to hear your thoughts. This is Wagner Knows Why. Like, share, subscribe. Catch you next time.